The studio was alive with its usual morning energy, a flurry of camera operators adjusting lenses, producers moving papers, and makeup artists giving last-minute touch-ups. The audience chatter created a hum that bounced off the walls, punctuated by the occasional clap as Lorraine Kelly introduced the day's guest. Today, the tension was palpable even before the cameras went live. Leonardo DiCaprio, the acclaimed actor known not only for his films but also for his environmental activism, sat poised on the guest chair. Across from him, Joy Behar adjusted her seat with practiced ease, her signature smile in place, projecting confidence that came from years of experience on live television. But something in Leonardo's calm, piercing gaze hinted that this would not be a routine interview. The air seemed to crackle with anticipation, the kind that only a live show with unpredictable dynamics could generate. Lorraine Kelly's voice broke through the background noise, warm and professional, introducing Leonardo with the kind of reverence that acknowledged his career achievements, his activism, and his cultural impact. The audience responded immediately, a mixture of polite clapping and murmurs of approval, their attention sharply focused on the unfolding scene. Leonardo returned the gestures with a slight nod and a polite smile, his demeanor composed but alert, like a chess player anticipating every move on the board. Joy Behar leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the desk, the sparkle in her eyes signaling readiness for the verbal sparring she was known for. Joy began the segment with her usual flair, her tone playful yet edged with curiosity. "Leonardo, you've been in the spotlight for decades, and you've always spoken your mind. But some people might say that you're selective in what you choose to say. Do you ever worry about public perception?" The question, casual on the surface, carried the weight of provocation, a test of how Leonardo would respond under live scrutiny. The audience shifted in their seats, sensing the tension as the first ripple of what promised to be a dramatic exchange passed through the studio. Leonardo met her gaze directly, his expression calm, almost serene, yet there was an unmistakable intensity behind his eyes. "Joy, perception is what people make of it. I've learned that staying true to your beliefs and speaking honestly matters far more than trying to satisfy everyone's expectations. That honesty is what shapes dialogue, what sparks real change." His voice was steady, measured, carrying an authority that commanded attention without raising volume. The audience reacted, some murmuring their agreement, others leaning forward in anticipation of what might come next. Joy attempted to regain control with a slight smirk, leaning in, her tone teasing but pointed. "But isn't it risky to speak so openly, especially on topics like climate change or Hollywood politics? Some viewers might find it polarizing, or even controversial." Leonardo's response was deliberate, precise, each word striking with quiet power. "Joy, controversy isn't something I avoid, it's often necessary when addressing issues that truly matter. I'm not here to please anyone or to be popular. I'm here to be responsible, and responsibility doesn't always come comfortably." The audience responded with audible approval, a mixture of applause and murmurs. The shift in energy was evident. Joy, normally confident and quick-witted, found her usual strategies met with calm, unwavering authority. She leaned back slightly, adjusting her posture as if preparing for a counter, but the tension was unmistakable. The cameras captured every micro-expression, the subtle narrowing of her eyes, the flicker of surprise, the brief tightening of her lips. Jane, or rather, Leonardo's, presence had already altered the dynamic of the room. Joy tried to pivot to humor, a tactic she often used to deflect challenging questions and regain dominance. "Well, some people might find it intimidating, Leonardo, when someone is that direct. Don't you ever worry about alienating your audience?" Her laugh was light, yet forced, betraying a hint of unease that only a seasoned audience member or attentive viewer would notice. Leonardo leaned slightly forward, calm and deliberate, his eyes never leaving hers. "Intimidating, maybe, but honesty and responsibility aren't measured by comfort. Alienation isn't the concern, integrity is. People will always judge, but that doesn't change the necessity of truth." Applause broke out in the studio, louder this time, some audience members standing, energized by Leonardo's composed authority. Cameras caught the subtle tension on Joy's face, the jaw tightening, the slight flush on her cheeks, the way her hands clasped nervously for a brief moment before resting back on the desk. The usual balance of power that Joy wielded with ease on her show had clearly shifted. Leonardo's calm presence, coupled with his deliberate articulation of principles, had overtaken the conversation, and it was increasingly evident to everyone watching that Joy's usual dominance was slipping. Not willing to concede, Joy tried one more approach, mixing humor with a subtle jab. I guess it must be exhausting to always weigh every word, to think about responsibility on top of fame and the pressure of public scrutiny. The studio was still buzzing with anticipation as the cameras returned from the commercial break. The audience, already on edge from the intensity of the first segment, whispered excitedly among themselves, exchanging glances that conveyed both awe and curiosity. There was a shared understanding that something remarkable had already taken place, and the expectation of what was to come next created a tangible tension in the room. Joy Behar, normally a commanding presence on her show, sat with her posture slightly more rigid, her usual playful energy muted under the weight of Leonardo DiCaprio's unflinching calm. Her hands rested lightly on the desk, fingers tapping ever so slightly, a subtle indication of the internal calculation taking place. Across from her, Leonardo remained poised, his demeanor composed, his eyes steady and focused, radiating a quiet authority that made the room feel smaller, more intimate, and more charged. Lorraine Kelly, ever professional, subtly adjusted her posture as well, aware that she needed to maintain balance while letting the tension unfold naturally. Joy opened the second segment with a softer approach, attempting to redirect the conversation to Leonardo's career, a territory she hoped would be familiar ground. Leonardo, your career has been incredible, from your early roles to your recent projects. How do you decide what to take on, and how do you balance your professional life with your activism? Her tone was lighter now, less confrontational, yet there was an underlying sharpness, a calculated attempt to regain some of the influence she had lost in the previous exchange. The audience leaned forward, sensing the subtle power struggle that was about to continue. Leonardo's response was measured, his calm intensity unwavering. Joy, for me, there's no separation between what I do professionally and what I believe personally. Each project, each decision is weighed against its impact and its alignment with my values. The public sees only the surface, but every action, every choice is part of a larger responsibility. It's not a balancing act, it's an integration of what matters most. His words resonated with the audience, many nodding in agreement, recognizing the depth and intentionality behind his statement. Cameras lingered on his face, capturing the quiet authority and deliberate phrasing that made his presence so commanding. Joy attempted to interject with a lighter comment, hoping to regain footing through humor. I guess that must be exhausting at times, Leonardo, always thinking about impact and responsibility. Don't you ever just want to relax and say what's convenient? There was a subtle edge to her voice, a challenge masked as casual curiosity. The audience tensed, knowing this was a pivotal moment, the point at which the dynamic could shift again, or solidify Leonardo's dominance. Leonardo's gaze remained steady, his expression calm yet cutting in its precision. Joy, convenience isn't a measure of wisdom. Choosing what's right over what's easy isn't exhausting, it's necessary. The moment you compromise on integrity, everything else loses meaning. I'm not here to take the easy path, and neither should anyone who claims to have influence. His tone carried authority without raising volume, and the audience reacted instantly, a wave of applause spreading through the studio. Some audience members stood, others leaned forward, fully engaged by the clarity and conviction in his words. Joy's attempts to redirect the conversation began to falter. She leaned in slightly, her voice sharper now, trying to maintain control with pointed commentary. But surely you realize that being that direct can intimidate people, Leonardo. Not everyone wants to hear truths that make them uncomfortable. Leonardo's response was deliberate, unyielding, and precise. Intimidation isn't the point. Truth isn't about comfort. People will always feel challenged by honesty, that's natural. What matters is choosing integrity over popularity. Leadership isn't about making people comfortable, it's about guiding them with responsibility and conviction. The audience erupted in applause again, louder and more sustained than before. Cameras focused on Joy, capturing the subtle changes in her demeanor, a brief furrowing of the brow, the faint tightening of her lips, the way her hands shifted nervously on the desk. The audience, some whispering to each other, recognized the rare moment of a host being humbled in real time by a guest who wielded calm authority and intellectual precision. Lorraine Kelly maintained her composure, her eyes flicking between the two, aware of the magnitude of what was unfolding. Joy tried a final strategy, blending humor with a thinly veiled jab. Well, Leonardo, some might say that taking responsibility this seriously makes life feel heavier than it has to be. Don't you ever worry about alienating people with that intensity? Her voice carried a nervous laugh, an attempt to soften the pointed nature of the question. Leonardo's response was calm, firm, and quietly devastating in its clarity. Joy, I don't measure my actions by who might be alienated. I measure them by whether they are honest and responsible. Alienation is a reaction to truth, not the goal of conversation. If you speak with integrity, people may feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is often the first step toward growth. The audience responded immediately, applause and murmurs of approval mixing in the studio. Cameras panned across the audience.